Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 0.2, The Beast from the Sea. We are back.
Hello.
Hello.
Why don't we just jump right into it, huh?
Yeah.
I said that, but I'm still trying to get a little bit of pretzel out of my teeth. Alright, let's do it. Wait. Okay, let's do it. Oh, hang on, he's editing again.
Okay.
In the beginning, they said, there was an end. The birthplace of humanity had been given many names over the eons. Earth, Terra, Hell, Home. When the final shadow had danced forth from that many-named rock, spreading out among the stars, humanity's empire had been shredded away to nearly nothing. From that diabolical massacre, only a single shining star had survived, the last human, and the very picture of brilliance. With once in a species ingenuity, that person had transcended the limits of flesh, conquering the apocalypse and birthing a new species from elevated blood. That final survivor of humanity became the first of the gene nobility, the Lord Director Eve. Having created a perfect form for itself, it then created a perfect species from its own flesh. The first generation of gene nobles, the first generation of the gods, had been Eve's own divine children. During his time at Elizabeth's castle, Edgar had once done some reading on what remained of the old faiths. A good number of them revered multiple gods, like the dogma of the nobility, but some beheld only one. With those, sub-divinities like the subsequent generations of nobles would be considered something more like angels rather than gods in their own rights, servants, so to speak. It was surprisingly difficult to kill a servant. The shadow of their starship danced over the threshold of the coast as it rushed to its destination. That shadow was a malformed, asymmetrical thing. The ship had been modified extensively, modules and chunks from several different models bolted together to scrape together whatever benefits they could. A patchwork chariot to gallop across the stars. For the last 6 months, the Zaylan Morhan had been their everything. Their home, their weapon, their sickbed, even, if they were not careful, their coffin. At first, it had been filled far beyond capacity with soldiers and servants who had accompanied Edgar in fleeing Yaslov after Elizabeth's death. Those numbers had been reduced drastically. Battle after battle, encounter after encounter, plucking away a few at a time. The galaxy clawed its own back. Even with all those losses, though, there was one new face. Edgar turned around from the pilot's seat, a calm smile on his lips despite the severity of their mission here. Bathed in the golden sunlight of Durandara, he almost looked heavenly, and with cool blue eyes he looked into the darkness at the back of the ship, at the shadow sitting there. "Make sure you're ready," Edgar said calmly. "We arrive in 30 seconds. The shadow twitched. Whether it had been asleep or waiting, Edgar could not say. All he could say was that it was now fully alert, as evidenced by the malicious grin spreading across its face. Zarakel Barris, dubbed the Blind Man by his enemies, and he had many enemies. The reason for the name was obvious. To be perfectly honest, Edgar had assumed the story of him ripping his eyes from their sockets had been Gene Noble propaganda, but if Zarakel was to be believed, it was completely true. Fresh bandages were wrapped around his eye line even now, and so that feral grin of his was the only true marker of his emotions. "Finally," Zarakel seethed, licking his lips in anticipation. I'm just imagining Illidan from World of Warcraft.
I don't know him.
Google him while I read. As Edgar and Zarakel had been created from the same genetic template, they should have been basically identical. But life had put its claws in Edgar's brother well. He was gaunt, weathered, with the impression of a starving animal about him. Edgar had never met Vitoli. Hell, he'd only met Zarakel a month ago, but he suspected that all of the passion in Trilogy Blue had gone to the Blind Man. Smoke rose over the horizon, the crash site where their target had come down. The personal starship of the Gene Noble they'd been tracking for the last few weeks. If all went well, this would be his gravesite too. 10 seconds, said Edgar, as the crash site drew closer. Get ready to drop. He stood up from the pilot's seat, letting another cogitant take the controls from him as he joined his brother and the soldiers at the back of the vessel. 7 of them in all. Edgar, Zarakel, 2 crownless women who'd escaped from a mining prison, their bodies equipped with cumbersome prosthetics to replace what imprisonment had stolen. A pugnant man, muted by shell shock, who'd been traveling with Zarakel before. a cogitant who'd fled from a war game, trained as a battlefield engineer, the last of the Muscapugnants from Yaslov, a plasma rifle clutched in his fearful hands. Are these the Zaylan Morhan?
Right now, I would say they're in the Zaylan Warham, the ship. It's not really a thing
Right.
yet.
Right, but are they the future of what is to become
Perhaps
the
we'll
funny
see.
weapons? With these 7 people, they would kill what might have been a servant, what might have been an angel, what might have been a god. 0, the pilot said. The cargo doors opened beneath them, and as one, their group hurled themselves out onto the sandy surface of Durandara. Repulsors in the soles of their suits softened their fall as they landed on the beach, a heavy cargo pod crashing down right behind them. There was no time to get their bearings, no time to hesitate. When killing a Gene Noble, every fraction of every second counted. And so they just moved. This makes me happy, because this is kind of how I wrote in my prequel. I had them, get dropped by a little starship, and they're like, go, go, go. Zarakel charged towards the wreckage of the star yacht. Are they playing, Helldivers music as they do this?
Maybe. In your
Zarakel
mind, maybe.
charged towards the wreckage of the star yacht, accompanied by the mute pugnant, the Muscapugnant flying with his insect wings to provide support from the air. Edgar got to work with the remaining 3 members of the team, opening the cargo pod and hauling out the prefabricated parts within. A cloud covered the sun as Zarakel crested the dune, reaching the crashed starship. The rocket-shaped vessel had snapped in half upon impact with the ground, creating a huge pit in the sand. It was unlikely that any of the crew had survived, but the Gene Noble it carried certainly had. As Zarakel readied himself, pulling a silver spear from its holster at his side, he listened with his keen ears, and heard the arrival. His noble dignity, Gunhild, Judge and Jester, reboot of Maria. I thought they were all named after queens.
Yeah.
Is there a queen named Gunhild?
Yeah.
Oh. Gunhild pulled himself out of the crater on 6 thin-bladed tendrils, her head appearing before anything else. His face bore the appearance of an owl, massive wide eyes taking in their environment from atop an absurdly long neck. They blinked separately with wet clicks. Even facing 3 armed soldiers, though, Gunhild didn't react straight away. Now that he had survived the crash, he had no more fear for his life. The idea of humans being a threat to him simply did not exist inside his mind. Unlike Elizabeth, he had never even considered the possibility. It would be like furniture coming to life and attacking you. You did have one her in the first sentence after the intro, unless that was intentional as well.
Oh, sorry.
Yo, you're good. Zarakel took advantage of that momentary blind spot, and with an animalistic howl, he plunged his spear right between Gunhild's eyes. Zarakel, Edgar had found, was not like most people, but it wasn't that he was stronger or smarter. He barely ever ate and barely ever drank. Hatred, it seemed, had become the primary resource keeping him alive. That wasn't his advantage. His advantage was in what he lacked: hesitation. Anyone else might have faltered, paused for a second before directly attacking an enemy on the level of a Gene Noble with nothing but a spear. Zarakel didn't even twitch before he pierced Gunhild's flesh. His thrust was fast, as was his retraction. Gunhild's neck squirmed back, blood spraying from the hole in his head, doing his best to stay out of range of a follow-up strike. His beak snapped open, and an infuriated scream poured forth. "What is the meaning of bang?" Gunhild's head exploded. Zarakel's spear was no ordinary implement. It contained a payload of explosive pellets, and with each stab it injected one of those pellets into its target. An attack from the inside was one of the best ways to take a Gene Noble by surprise. The number of them accustomed to actually participating in combat was surprisingly slim, and it did not include Gunhild, the Judge and Jester. The defenses that would pop into his mind first would surely be external. Still, those detonations would never be enough to kill a Gene Noble, no matter how much joy Zarakel took in setting them off. It was a maneuver capable of stunning them, temporarily redistributing their mass, but nothing more. For a confirmed kill, something more total was required. As Zarakel continued to stab at Gunhild's chicken-like body, and the soldiers with him provided supporting fire, Edgar's team continued to assemble what they had pooled from the cargo pod. Some parts of the device were capable of self-assembly, but the majority of the unit needed to be put together by hand, and they had run countless drills in anticipation of this day. By last count, they'd gotten their time down to 1 minute and 2 seconds. Even then, that was cutting it fine, but building a portable incinerator was delicate work. The plan was simple. Zarakel's team would use their tools and weapons to reduce Gunhild's size as much as possible, and keep him on the back foot, while Edgar's team constructed the incinerator. When it was complete, Zarakel would lead a second assault to drive the G-Nobles into the box-shaped module, and once he was secured inside, it would be activated, cremating him completely. The destruction of the entire body. Even a G-Noble couldn't survive that. It was a gamble, Edgar knew, and one that was likely to fail. If Zarakel made a mistake in combat and was struck down, they would all die. If someone building the incinerator got nervous and had their hands shake, they would all die. If Gunhild wasn't as caught off guard as they'd expected, they would all die. If Gunhild turned into liquid and said, "I'll reconstitute in several days," they would all die. All a gamble, all a gamble. But those were the best odds you could get against a G-Noble. As an enemy of the world, everything you did was a gamble, even breathing. As Edgar slotted the heat controls into the device and looked up, however, he realized they had already lost that gamble. A second G-Noble had appeared, squirming out of the sand a short distance away. It was a long worm of blood and gore, covered in sharp spines, tipped with a single staring human eyeball framed by flower petals. The people shrank to a pinprick as it observed the labors before it. Edgar continued to work, ready to salvage every second of output from the situation as he could, but fear froze the others right in place. One of the miners spoke. The noble launched itself, and the top half of the miner's body was shaved away by the impact, reducing her to a pair of legs that quickly collapsed. The second miner screamed, raising the support strut she'd been holding as a weapon, but a quick lunge from the noble turned her face into a hole. The other cogitant just turned to run, as if that would somehow grant him clemency. It did not. The G-Noble leapt into his stomach through his back, shredded his insides, and, as his body collapsed to his knees, poked its head out of his mouth to observe Edgar. The staring eye parted like a pair of lips, and words poured out. "Identify yourself," it said. Edgar's eyes flicked between the components in his hands and what remained of the incinerator. Wait, it's in Edgar's stomach right now?
No.
Or the miners, okay.
No,
the half-built...
So everyone in Edgar's team got killed in for 2 seconds.
Damn. The half-built machine had suffered critical damage during that skirmish. Completing it was no longer possible. Killing 2 G-Nobles, let alone, was also impossible.
Yeah.
Or this was also, yeah. No, he corrected himself. It wasn't impossible. A method still existed, he just didn't know it. "Identify yourself!" the G-Noble repeated with a bark. Edgar could still hear the sounds of explosions behind him, coupled with plasma shots. Zarakel's team were still engaging Gunhild. He couldn't count on any support from them. Edgar let the component slip out of his grip and fall onto the sand as he put his hands up. A thought occurred. The voice that was questioning him right now, it was the same as the voice that had rebuked Zarakel barely a minute ago. Gunhild's voice. That made sense. It wasn't that they'd encountered 2 G-Nobles by sheer bad luck. They'd encountered 2 Gunhilds. The mental blocks Eve imposed against unauthorized reproduction were powerful, but just like his starship, Gunhild's body had been split in half during the crash. It was possible that he didn't even realize there were 2 of him yet. Edgar searched for a way out of this situation, an exit, a path to victory, but his mind found none. That was a little frustrating, to be honest. He knew there must be a way out of this, but he simply wasn't equipped to see it. If he was going to die, he would have preferred truly impossible odds. "Identify yourself!" the second Gunhild screeched for the 3rd time. Oh well, Edgar thought. It is what it is. He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak a word, a miracle occurred. The second Gunhild heard it before he did, with senses beyond humanity. The flower-like worm swiveled around in its human plant pot, cyclopean eye looking directly towards the ocean. The eye narrowed like a camera zooming in. Edgar followed the gaze of a god and saw what it saw. Something was coming, something from the sea. At first Edgar thought it was some kind of low-flying bird, but no. It was a machine, a hoverbike with 2 riders, kicking up plumes of water as it zoomed over the ocean, directly towards them. The speed of the vehicle was absurd, overclocked to its very limits. The second Gunhild had only a... What?
What?
The second Gunhild had only a second?
Yeah, there's 2 Gunhilds.
Oh. The second Gunhild had only a second after sighting the object to react to it, and he did not use that second well. The bike slammed into him, turning his temporary vessel into a bloody smear and sending him flying, pulverized. Edgar blinked as he watched the mangled wreckage of the bike keep going, driven by momentum, dragging the bloody worm across the coast and leaving a crimson trail behind it. "You good?" asked a voice from behind him. Edgar looked over his shoulder. Even with his entire team killed, he wasn't alone. The riders had jumped off of the bike at the last moment, it seemed. A man and a woman. The gray-haired young man bore the golden eyes of a pugnant, but his build seemed far too short and slight for the subspecies. Defective, most likely. Edgar had heard of such cases. Pugnants failing to develop properly, producing low-level troops that were good for nothing else than tossing into the meat grinder of a war game. That, or recycling for raw materials. In his hand he clutched what at first looked like a pistol, but no. It was connected by a tube to a fuel tank on his belt. A portable flamethrower, then. A good choice against a Gene Noble. Oh. Sorry, I was a little... The young woman, on the other hand, looked at Edgar with black sclera beneath short black hair, tiny yellow pupils staring from the depths of her dark gaze. An Umbrant. It was funny, the Umbrants, along with Zerakel, had been responsible for sparking this rebellious movement. But this was the first time Edgar had actually met one in person. In each hand, the androgynous-looking woman held a buzzing scimitar. High-frequency vibrations in the blades would allow them to cut through just about anything. Again, a good choice against Gene Nobles. These people knew what they were doing. "Hey!" the pugnant man, the one who had spoken first, said again. "You okay, man?" Oh, right. These two had definitely just saved Edgar's life. They'd probably be happy if he thanked them. He nodded. "I'm not hurt. Thank you. I appreciate it. Who are you?" "I'm Azez," the pugnant said, before jerking his head towards his Umbrant companion. "That's Bishu. Looks like we were hunting the same prey, huh? You got a way out of here?" "I'm sorry," Edgar said. Azez stepped past him, pulling his flamethrower from its holster. "This is a shit show," he said grimly. "We need to get out of here, now. Our ride's out of commission. Take it you guys have a ship?" His golden eyes were fixed on the distant wreckage of his bike, the wreckage that the second Gunhild was now squirming its way out of. On the other side of the dune, the first Gunhild was pushing Zerakel's team back. Within a minute or so, they'd all be trapped in one place, and then the slaughter would begin. This seemed unwinnable. Edgar put a finger to his ear. "Get us out of here, Zaylan Morhan." "Damn it!" Oh, wrong guy. "Damn it!" Zerakel roared, slamming his fist against the cargo hold's wall, then another punch and another. "Damn it! Damn it! Fuck!" He was the very picture of frustration, face contorted with tension, teeth bared with such ferocity that saliva was spilling down his chin. Azez and Bishu exchanged bemused glances. Perhaps they too had assumed Zerakel's hateful reputation was the product of propaganda. Zerakel's anger was understandable, though, even if Edgar didn't share it. Zerakel's team had only fared a little better than his own. The mute pugnant had been killed by one of the first Gunhild's attacks, leaving only Zerakel and the Muska pugnant to evacuate. Bang, bang, bang! Even as they sailed through the dark void of stars, Zerakel wasn't giving that wall a rest. Finally, he seemed to tire himself out, his fist sliding down the wall until he collapsed into a vague sitting position on the floor. "Ridiculous," he growled, running a hand over his face. "Goddamn ridiculous. He split into two? What? These fucking things can kill us just by getting wounded." Bishu nodded in agreement, her arms crossed. "I've seen people get killed by puddles of their blood," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "If it gets to the point where there's an actual fight, it's basically impossible to kill them." Zerakel sniffed, turning his head up towards her. "Watch your fucking mouth, bitch! If there had been just one of these bastards, like there should have been," he snarled, nostrils flaring, "I would have killed it! Don't give me coward shit like saying it's impossible." "I'm not saying it's impossible to kill them," Bishu gestured with a hand, not responding to Zerakel's provocation. "What I mean is that it's only possible under very specific conditions, where we have complete control over the battlefield. And those conditions aren't easy to come by. Tell me, how many Gene Tyrants have you killed?" Edgar cocked his head from the corner. "Gene Tyrants?" Azez smirked wryly. "What exactly is noble about them?" "One," Zerakel grunted in response to Bishu's question, ignoring Azez. It seemed he wasn't too excited about the new terminology. "The one you know about. We drove that bitch Olga right into a star." A sly grin spread across his lips. "Turned on the communications and listened to her squeal. Best moment of my goddamn life." "It wasn't a fight, is what I mean," Bishu nodded. "By the time she realized you were trying to kill her, she was already doomed, right?" The grin widened. "Right." How about you? She looked over to Edgar. I've heard you killed a gene tyrant too. How did that happen? Edgar nodded. It wasn't a fight, he conceded. With such small numbers, Azaz took over for his friend, the only thing we can rely on are fortuitous circumstances. Miracles, basically. And you can't rely on miracles to keep coming around. Tell me, how many people do you have right now? 6. It was neither Edgar or Zarakel that answered, but instead the Muscapugnant, the only other survivor of Zarakel's team. Until now he'd been noting something down in a little journal of his, biting down hard on his lip. He stuffed it into his pocket as he stood to face Azaz. Sorry, Azaz said. I didn't catch your name, friend. Hellywood, the Muscapugnant said. We've got 6 people. Azaz chuckled. Including us, huh? You're here, aren't you? The Muscapugnant crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. It's a triumph for even 6 people to stand up against the gene tyrants, Azaz smiled warmly. But it's not enough to beat them. His eyes flicked towards Edgar. Tell me, what exactly was your objective today? Why were you going after Gunhild? Edgar smiled pleasantly. You're asking me? Azaz matched that smile. You're the leader, aren't you? Wouldn't it be natural to think Zarakel is the leader? Nah, Azaz smirked, shaking his head. He talks too much and you talk too little. Edgar nodded. Even after his force and Zarakel's had joined together, they'd agreed that Edgar would continue to be in charge of their plans and strategies. If this tiny group was still something that required a leader, it would probably be right to say it was Edgar. Gunhild is well liked among the other gene tyrants, Edgar explained. Our hope was that after we killed him, they would tighten their control of this sector in response. The people would react to their increased suffering and revolt as a result. It's exactly as you say. We understand that increasing our numbers is the key to victory here. Azaz seemed to wince at Edgar's plan, shaking his head. Okay, he muttered. I get where you're coming from with that, so, okay. Let me ask you something else. Why is it you rebel against the gene tyrants? Edgar didn't even have to think about that one. There are 2 things I value in this world, Edgar said. Happiness and harmony. A world where everyone is smiling, and a world where everything is quiet. I used to think it was possible for the nobility to create a world like that. Now I understand they're the obstacle to it. It's as simple as that. Azaz nodded along. You seem like a logical sort of person. That's why you think of all this in terms of numbers and increasing them. But the numbers already exist, he said, leaning forward. There are groups just like yours all over the galaxy already. Tiny teams who think they still need to inspire the people to rebel. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at his friend. Ever since me and Bishu escaped, ever since we set out, we've been searching for these groups, trying to link them all together. The people are already inspired. The people are already fighting. Everyone just thinks that they're alone. But that's not true. That's never been true. Bishu smiled as her partner spoke. The Muscapugnant listened carefully. The pilot was watching from the cockpit. Even Zarakel had shut his mouth, a rare occasion indeed. Azaz, however, looked only at Edgar as he spoke. This pitch was for him more than anyone else. The tyrants are the ones who built this world. The tyrants are the ones who control this world. But they made it out of us, out of people. We're the ones holding the whole thing up. All it takes is enough of us to just throw up our arms, and we can win. If enough of us do that, it's impossible for us not to win. The man with the golden eyes offered his hand, and as he did, the light of a star passed through the portholes of the Zaylan Morhan, washing over the scene. How strange, Edgar idly thought. My heart's beating a little fast. How about it, Edgar? Azaz smiled. Do you want to end the world with me? Wow. Gay. Gay. How beautiful. I don't know if we have any Aether questions, though.
I don't think so. Surprisingly.
Yeah. Surprisingly.
Well, I think we skipped quite a few, to be honest. Last time.
We?
I think so, yeah.
Go find them, then.
Don't talk to me like that.
Well, I already did, so... Deal with it? Problem?
Are Dragon's discarded limbs valuable in supremacy, Lan asks. Maybe, I would say. Yeah, everything's valuable to someone.
Finally, my Aether ability that requires the limb of a Supreme to activate.
Why is it asked? Well, Umbrance hijacking Olga's vessel to steer it into a star, and Umbrance hijacking a Gene Tyrant ship to crash into Nurse, and it's separate incidents or the same one told differently. We've already answered this sort of through the story. Those are separate incidents.
Wait, where was this at?
This isn't for questions.
Oh. Oh, I don't know where that is.
Lan asks, how much do you choreograph fights ahead of time versus improvise while writing the chapter? I generally have like set pieces I want to hit, like cool moments I want to get, and I improvise in between those to get to them.
Oh, I had some questions for you a while back, didn't I? Did I ever ask these?
Okay, yeah, okay. Are regrown parts Panacea fungus mimicking human parts, or does Panacea somehow stimulate cells to rapidly regenerate? So the Panacea becomes the part, basically.
Right. How is it able to do that so quickly?
It's so mysterious.
How does it does it expend mass and energy? Is there a theoretical limit to how much that can be done before they need to feed somehow?
Well, you need enough Panacea to do it, basically. You need the existing Panacea mass.
Right, sure. So, like, Panacea doesn't take up all of Dragon's insides. It's, like, a bit. So, presumably it has to grow to match whatever he's missing. So, how much can it do that before it needs to, like, feed somehow? Well,
it's very efficiently feeding, like, passively, I would say, all the time, on various matters. So,
okay.
While he does sometimes have to, like, recharge, like, eat and drink and stuff like that himself, generally he can keep going a long while on that regeneration.
Wow, okay. What part of her biology allows for conscience in the first place?
It's so mysterious. I would say Panacea is basically galaxy-wide, also sort of a big brain.
Does she have a brain that can theoretically be killed to stop her functioning entirely?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. If you pierce her in just the right spot,
maybe not that.
Shred her brain to bits. Do the Polnareff, like, stab with Silver Chariot and then swish the blade around, scramble her brains.
Did Westmore talk with Palatine pre or post amalgamation? Post. And that was when he was in the GID.
Will we hear anything about Westmore's turn arc?
No, we all not.
I can hear you dying, so maybe we wrap this up.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching. Hopefully we'll get some more chapters soon. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.